The stars above flickered like cold fire as Jackson's escape pod broke through the purple clouds of an unknown world. His systems were failing, and his food supplies were low. He had been drifting for days after a pirate attack in Sector 12. Now, his pod shook violently before it crashed into the red sand with a painful crunch. Smoke hissed from the side panels, but Jackson coughed, sat up, and smiled. He was still alive. Outside, the sky was soft violet, and the air smelled like metal and flowers. He pulled out a translation device and stepped onto the strange world. A large sign near the rocky path welcomed him. It read, "Welcome to Veritas, the planet of absolute truth." Jackson laughed, thinking it was a tourism slogan. But the deeper he walked into the city, the stranger it got. The people, tall, smooth-skinned aliens with glowing eyes, spoke with perfect calm. They gave exact answers to questions, never exaggerated, never avoided truth. Even the children told the truth, no matter how harsh it was. "Your clothes smell bad," said one alien boy without blinking. A nearby alien woman explained, "We cannot lie, not by choice or design. Our brains reject falsehoods." Jackson paused, suddenly aware of something. Dangerous. If no one here could lie, then no one here would expect him to lie either. His mind raced, wondering if they could detect a lie just by hearing it. He tested it carefully, telling a small one. He said, "I am a royal envoy from Earth." The aliens around him bowed their heads respectfully. They believed him instantly. No reaction, no warning, no alarms. It worked. That's when the hook sank deep in his mind. A place like this, a whole planet where truth ruled, could be a gold mine for someone who could lie. Someone like him. Someone. Human Jackson wandered into the city's main market, where merchants sold glowing stones, floating orbs, and humming devices. Each merchant listed the item's exact weight, age, and function. One even said, "This is an energy fruit that tastes bitter and causes stomach pain." And yet someone still bought it, because the truth gave comfort here. No tricks, no scams, no marketing illusions. He saw a beautiful alien girl with silver blue skin arranging orbs at her small stall. Her movements were calm but distant. When their eyes met, she tilted her head slightly. "You are not from here," she said. "I can feel the hesitation in your answers." Jackson smiled and replied, "I'm just nervous. Never been to such a beautiful planet before." She looked puzzled, but not suspicious. "My name is Lyra," she said softly. "Are all humans like you?" "Not exactly," he replied. "Some lie, some don't. But I'm honest." Another lie, small but powerful, and she smiled at it. Lyra told him that her people couldn't even fake emotions. Their society was built on truth alone, courts, politics, even love. But something inside her felt different when she spoke to Jackson. It was like she couldn't tell what he really meant, and that mystery made her curious. Later that evening, Jackson was given a room by the city elders who believed his lie about being Earth's ambassador. They offered him food, credits, and access to archives. He looked out the window at the glowing spires of Veritas and whispered to himself, "This planet runs on truth, but I run on survival." And for the first time in years, he didn't feel powerless. He felt dangerous. He felt free. But in a dark chamber far beneath the city, a figure watched him through a glowing sphere. It was a Thal seer, one of the old species that lived beyond emotion and words. The seer's eyes narrowed and its thoughts echoed across space. There is a ripple in the truth. A shadow dressed as light. A lie walks among us, and so it began. A human with a silver tongue on a planet of truth. A web of lies wrapped in kindness, charm, and greed. And only one alien girl, Lyra, who felt something wasn't right but couldn't name it. Because her world didn't even have a word for deception. Jackson didn't know yet, but every lie he told on Veritas came with a price, and sooner or later, the planet would demand payment. The next morning, Jackson woke up in a soft, glowing room that smelled like clean energy and fresh stone. A robe was laid out for him, embroidered with golden thread and symbols he couldn't read. There was also a tray of breakfast, warm bread with purple honey and a tall glass of green juice that hummed softly. He took a bite, grinned, and whispered, Not bad for a fake ambassador. Outside, Veritas buzzed with calm activity. People moved with graceful precision, never in a rush, never shouting. Each step had purpose, each word was true. And that made Jackson more dangerous than any weapon ever made. He returned to the central market where he had first met Lyra. This time the merchants greeted him with respectful bows. "Golden speaker," one said. "May your words shape the stars." Jackson smiled, not understanding the title, but liking it anyway. He passed a crowd watching a public debate. Two merchants argued over trade rights, but they spoke only truth. One said, "My fruit is fresher." The other said, "Yours is heavier, but mine tastes better." There was no shouting. Just clear, honest words and a judge who listened with perfect calm. The winner wasn't the loudest, but the most truthful. It was unlike anything Jackson had seen before. He began testing his limits. He told one merchant, "Earth's wind is intelligent. It whispers advice to those who listen." The alien's eyes widened. "Your world sounds holy," the merchant said, handing Jackson a glowing orb in trade. Another time he claimed, "I once flew through a star tunnel and saw time itself blink." They believed him. Everyone did. And each time he told a lie, it became easier, smoother, more natural. He stopped worrying about getting caught, because no one suspected the idea of falsehood. Not here, not on Veritas. Lyra watched from a distance, her eyes unreadable. When Jackson approached, she said, "You say things no one else says. They make me feel things I've never felt before, and are they true?" Jackson hesitated, then touched her shoulder gently. "They're true enough if they bring you joy," he said softly. She didn't argue. She just nodded, as if trying to believe it with her whole heart. Later that day, a tall alien elder named Darren approached him. "You speak in ways that stir curiosity," Darren said. "The council wishes to hear you at tomorrow's gathering. Will you honor us with your words?" Jackson tried to play humble. "It would be my honor," he said with a bow. But inside, his mind raced. A chance to speak before the leaders of a truth-worshipping world. What kind of power could that bring? That night he sat by a light crystal lamp and made a list of phrases that sounded deep but meant nothing. Stars cry in silence. The soul bends time like rivers bend stone. Truth is not what is, but what could be. He practiced each one, making sure his voice shook just enough to seem wise. The next morning, the great hall of Veritas glowed with silver light. Hundreds of aliens sat silently as Jackson stepped forward. Dressed in fine robes, Lyra sat near the front, her eyes fixed on him. He began to speak, weaving a story about Earth's great mirror, a fake monument that shows not the face but the heart. Gasps rose in the air, soft and full of wonder. They believed him, they loved him, some even cried after the speech. The council gifted him a crystal necklace and the title of Voice of Dual Suns. He had lied his way into fame, and he was just getting started. But not everyone clapped. High in the shadowed balcony, a dark-robed figure stood silently, an old being with 4 eyes and a breathing mask. Its name was Centaur, a thal, one of the few species that could feel distortion in thought patterns, and it had come here after hearing whispers across the network. There is someone on Veritas who bends the truth like wind bends grass. That night, Centaur requested a private meeting with the Truth Keeper. "There is an invader among your people," Centaur said in a voice like cracking ice. "He carries a spark not born of light, but of shadow." The Truth Keeper narrowed his eyes. "We feel no dishonesty in his words," he said. "Then test his mind," Centaur replied. "Not his words, his mind." As Jackson rested in his luxury suite, a message was delivered to his door. "The Truth Keeper requests your presence at tomorrow's Soul Circle." It was a test. He didn't know it yet. But they weren't going to listen to his words anymore. They were going to feel the truth, and his lies, no matter how sweet, were about to meet their first real wall. Jackson walked through the glass corridors of Veritas, now wearing the robes of a respected guest. Aliens bowed to him with quiet smiles, their eyes shining with admiration. To them, He was the voice of dual suns, a human diplomat of wisdom and mystery. But inside, Jackson was just a broke trader with a talent for survival. And lying. He had already secured food, shelter, and status. But now he needed a way off the planet. Something fast. Something with hyperdrive. Something that could carry all the riches he was planning to take from this truth-ruled world. He found his answer in the outer docking bay. A massive starship sat unused, covered in stasis webs. Its surface shimmered with ancient tech and forgotten power. An old merchant named Vuroth stood nearby, polishing smaller craft for trade. "That ship's not for sale," Vuroth said without even turning his head. "It belonged to the last Explorer Guild, lost when they tried to fly through the red spiral. No one dares touch it now." Jackson's smile was calm, practiced, and perfectly false. "I know that ship," he said, folding his arms like a man with secrets. "On Earth, we call it a dream piercer. It doesn't run on fuel. It runs on memory crystals." Vuroth turned puzzled. "Memory? Crystals?" Jackson nodded slowly, as if remembering something painful. "They store emotion, experience, even love," he said. "It's why the ship doesn't move for anyone. It's waiting for a memory strong enough to awaken it." He touched the ship's hull gently. "I lost my brother in one of these," he whispered, eyes full of fake sorrow. "But I still carry his memories." Vuroth stared at him, the silence heavy. Finally, the old alien said, "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. You must take it." Jackson blinked, shocked by how easy that was. "No payment?" he asked, testing. "Just a promise," Vuroth replied. "Promise that you'll carry your brother's memory to the stars." "I swear," Jackson said, lying once more. He didn't have a brother. He didn't have a memory crystal. He had a gift for words, and that was enough. That night, Lyra found him sitting on the ship's ramp looking at the stars. "You told another story, didn't you?" she asked gently. He didn't answer right away. "I say what people want to believe," he said. "That's not the same as truth," she replied. "No," he said softly, "but it gives them hope." She sat beside him, folding her legs, like a child. "My people, and we never learned how to hope," she admitted. "We only learned how to accept. I wonder sometimes, is your way wrong or just different?" Jackson looked at her surprised. She didn't seem angry, just confused, curious, maybe even enchanted. The next day, word spread quickly. The Dream Piercer had accepted Jackson as its new pilot. The Council honored him again, this time with starlight silk, a sign of destiny. They believed the ship recognized his truth, but in reality it responded to his skill with manual controls, not memory crystals. Jackson took a test flight across the city's outer sky. Aliens gathered in the thousands, cheering. He waved to the crowd, smiling like a hero. But inside, he was counting credits. Deals he could make, lies he could tell, riches he could gain. Back in the capital, the Truth Keeper received a private report. It came from Sentol, the Thal mind reader. "There is something strange about the human," the report began. "His words are clean, but his thoughts twist like smoke. I felt uncertainty, memory gaps, and emotional fakes." The Truth Keeper frowned deeply. "This is dangerous," he said. "But we have no law against something we've never seen. No law against deception." Sentol offered a solution. "We test his soul, not through words, but with the old rite, the truth fire." That evening, a message was sent to Jackson's quarters. He read it slowly, his smile fading. He had been summoned for a public soul scan, the highest form of truth testing. No one had ever failed it, because no one had ever tried to lie through it. Lyra appeared, just as he folded the message. "You've been called," she said, her voice trembling. He nodded, pretending to be calm. "This is good." He lied again. "It will prove me." But his heart thudded against his ribs, because for the first time, he wasn't sure if his lies could save him. Lyra stood under the glowing moons of Veritas, her hands pressed together nervously. The sky shimmered above her, but her heart was heavier than ever. She had watched Jackson lie to an entire world, and somehow, she still wanted to believe in him. Even now, as the message spread across the city that he had been summoned for the soul scan, she felt torn. He was different from her people. His words were warm and strange, sometimes confusing but never dull. He made her feel things she didn't have. Words for fear, excitement, even laughter. And for a girl raised in a world without lies, those feelings were like fire, new and impossible to control. She found him in the quiet garden near the council hall, sitting alone. The golden robe of the voice of dual suns lay folded beside him. He looked tired, older, not because of time, but because of the weight of everything he had said. "They want to scan my soul," Jackson said quietly as she approached. Lyra nodded. "They believe something isn't right?" She whispered. "They're not wrong," Jackson replied. "I've told so many lies I don't even know what's real anymore." She sat beside him, the stone bench cool beneath them. "Then tell me one thing," she said. "Just one thing that's true." He looked into her glowing eyes, and for a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he said, "I've never met anyone like you." "That's the truth." Her eyes shimmered, not with light, but emotion. Maybe it wasn't much, but to her it was enough. She reached out and took his hand. "Come with me," she said. "There's a place I want to show you before the trial." They traveled to the outer cliffs of Veritas, where the ground was soft crystal and the wind hummed low songs. In the center of the field stood a white structure carved into the stone, a sanctuary, ancient and sacred. "This is where we make bond promises," Lyra said, "where two souls choose to walk forward together." Jackson froze. "Like marriage?" he asked, surprised. Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, but deeper. It's a soul agreement, made only once in a lifetime." He swallowed hard. "You brought me here?" "I don't know why," she said, looking away. "But something inside me wants to believe in you, even if the stars say I shouldn't. I want to know if there's even one piece of truth inside you that belongs to me." Jackson's heart twisted. This wasn't a trick. She wasn't using him. She was offering herself fully, completely, like only someone raised in truth could, and he had lied to her face from the beginning, but for the first time he didn't want to lie. He opened his mouth, ready to confess it all. The fake stories, the made-up brother, the memory crystals, the dream-piercer lie, everything. But then a sound echoed from behind them. Horns. Sharp and cold messengers had arrived. "The trial begins at dawn," they announced. "Prepare the soul for the light." Lyra turned to him with wide eyes. "I'll stand by you," she said, "no matter what they find." But Jackson's hands trembled. They wouldn't just find lies. They would see the greedy thoughts, the calculations, the hunger. Would she still stand beside him when his truth was no longer gentle? That night, the people of Veritas lit their sky with lanterns, a tradition before soul trials. They believed light would help guide the truth. But Jackson sat in darkness, alone, watching the lanterns float above him like judging eyes. Lyra came to him one last time before the sun rose. She held a small crystal in her palm. "This is my memory stone," she said. "It holds my most precious moment, my first time feeling doubt." She placed it in his hand. "And hope?" Jackson looked at the glowing shard. Inside, he saw a younger Lyra staring into space, feeling something she couldn't name. After meeting him, she had given him a part of her soul. And she didn't even know he had planned to run, to leave her, leave this planet, and sell her people's secrets to the highest bidder. But now, maybe he didn't want to run anymore. Maybe this planet of truth had done something to him. Maybe she had. When the sun finally touched the towers of Veritas, Jackson stepped forward into the soul circle. The council stood silent, the Thal mind reader, waiting with its glowing crown of thought fire. Jackson met Lyra's eyes one last time. She nodded, just once, not because she trusted his words anymore, but because she wanted to see what truth lived behind them. The trial had begun, and for the first time in his life, Jackson didn't want to lie, but the truth might still destroy everything. The sun rose over Veritas like a glowing blade cutting through mist. Every citizen felt it, even if they didn't speak of it. A soul scan wasn't just rare, it was sacred. And today, it was for the human who spoke like a star. Jackson stood in front of the ancient dome called the Circle of Knowing. It was made of crystal and silence. Inside, no lie could live, no secret could hide. He had never felt so small in his life. Lyra stood beside him, silent and still. She had barely spoken since the night in the sanctuary. She didn't offer comfort or warning, just presence, and that hurt more than words ever could. Council members lined the upper seats, dressed in white and silver. At the center stood the Thal, a tall, robed creature with 4 glowing eyes and no mouth. It did not speak with sound. Its voice echoed straight into the minds of everyone present. Jackson of Earth. The voice rang out like thunder without wind. You will now undergo the truth fire. You may not leave until your mind is seen. Jackson nodded once, even as his legs trembled. He stepped onto the center stone platform, where symbols began to glow beneath his feet. It was warm. Too warm. Like his skin was touching memory itself. The Thal raised its hand, and a ring of orange light circled Jackson. It hummed, then pulsed. His vision blurred. He felt something crawl into his thoughts, not painful but deep, like a current pulling him under. Begin, said the Thal. His first memory surfaced. His crash landing. The smoke. The sparks. The feeling of being alone and lost. The truth fire showed it all like a floating mirror in front of the crowd. The citizens of Veritas gasped, seeing what fear looked like. When it wasn't spoken but felt, then came the first lie. Him saying he was an ambassador. It replayed, word for word, emotion for emotion. He felt the shame wash over him like fire. He glanced at Lyra. Her face remained unreadable. Another memory came, trading a fake Earth relic for a hover gem. Then another, pretending he knew about the Dream Piercer's memory crystals. Each lie burned in the truth fire, not like flames, but like grief, and the people around him felt it. Some turned their faces away, others watched with silent tears, but then something changed. The truth fire didn't stop. It went deeper, beyond the lies, into the feelings behind them. A younger Jackson appeared, a boy on Earth, hungry, abandoned, selling scraps to survive. A traitor tricked him once, stole his only blanket, and that night, Jackson made a promise. If words can steal from me, I'll use words to take back everything. The council stirred. This wasn't a villain, it was a survivor. Someone shaped by pain, not evil. Jackson's voice cracked as he whispered, I didn't come here to hurt anyone. I just wanted a second chance. The Thal said nothing, but the light changed, from orange to deep blue. It was reading his present thoughts now, and in his mind one image stood above the rest. Lyra in the sanctuary asking him for truth. Not gold, not glory, just truth. The truth fire pulsed once more, and then faded. The scan was done. Silence filled the dome like a storm about to break. Then the Thal spoke. He is guilty, but not of harm, of hunger, of being raised, in a world where lies were armor. He lied not to destroy, but to survive. Gasps and murmurs swept through the council. No one had ever heard such a judgment before. The Truth Keeper stood, tall and stern. In our laws, deception is not written, he said, because we never knew it existed, but now we do. He turned to Jackson. You may not speak for our people again. You may not trade without supervision, but you may walk among us as one watched, not hated. Jackson nodded slowly. It was more mercy than he expected. The Truth Keeper looked at Lyra. You knew before the fire, he said. Why didn't you speak? She stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. Because I wanted to see if he'd finally speak for himself. And he did. The crowd parted as Jackson stepped down. He didn't wave, didn't smile. He just walked to Lyra and stood beside Her unsure if she would stay. After a long silence, she reached out and took his hand, not as a lover, not as a follower, but as someone who believed in growth, and perhaps in redemption. The trial was over, but the silence it left behind was heavier than before. Jackson sat alone on the edge of the reflecting pool near the sanctuary. The blue water shimmered with the light of 2 moons, but he didn't look up. He stared into the water like it held all the answers. For the first time on Veritas, he had spoken truth, and it had left him empty, not because he lost, but because he realized what he had nearly destroyed. The truth fire had revealed everything. His lies, his pain, his shame, but it also showed something unexpected: regret. A feeling that didn't exist on Veritas until he brought it with him, behind him. Soft footsteps approached. He didn't turn. He already knew it was Lyra. She stood beside him without saying a word. The silence between them wasn't cold this time. It was thoughtful. Finally, she asked, "Why didn't you lie in the trial too?" Jackson took a deep breath. "Because for once I didn't want to be the smartest man in the room," he said. "I just wanted to be real." She nodded slowly. "You were real," she said. "And still, they didn't exile you." Jackson gave a dry laugh. "Because they don't know what to do with someone like me. They don't know if I'm a threat or a lesson." He reached into his robe and pulled out something small. It was the memory crystal she had given him days ago, the one holding her first feeling of doubt and hope. "I kept this," he said. "Even when I thought about running, I couldn't leave it behind." Lyra looked at the crystal, then at him. "You changed something," she said quietly. "You didn't just lie to us. You showed us what we were missing." He looked up, confused. "Missing?" She sat beside him, placing her hands gently in her lap. "We never had to question anything," she explained. "We didn't have distrust, but we also didn't have forgiveness. Now, we're learning." Jackson was quiet for a long time. Then he finally said the words that had been stuck in his throat for days. "I'm sorry." Lyra looked at him sharply. "I don't mean sorry like a trick," he continued. "I mean, I'm sorry for using your kindness, your world, your trust. I came here thinking I was clever, but all I did was poison something beautiful." She didn't smile, but her shoulders softened. "Poison only kills, if it spreads," she said. "And you stopped." Jackson looked up at the stars. "I used to think lying was my power," he whispered, "but maybe truth is the real weapon, especially when it costs something to speak it." That night he made a decision. He returned the Dream Piercer, the starship he had lied to get. He walked into the docking bay and handed the access ring back to Vuroth, the merchant he had tricked. Vuroth stared at him for a long time. "Why?" he finally asked. "You could have left and no one would have stopped you." Jackson shook his head. "I don't want to run anymore," he said. "I want to stay and fix what I broke." Word spread fast. The human had returned the ship, given back every fake gift, and stopped speaking in riddles. He was no longer a mystery, just a man trying to do the right thing. The council summoned him again, but not for punishment. They asked him to help rewrite Veritas law, because for the first time in history, their people had to prepare for a future where lies might exist. "You understand deception," the Truth Keeper said. "You understand its danger, but also its reason." So Jackson became something new. Not a liar, not a criminal, but a bridge between 2 ways of thinking. He started teaching. Simple things at first: how to spot emotional shifts, how to listen. Not just with ears, but with instinct. He didn't teach how to lie. He taught how to live with uncertainty. Lyra visited his sessions often, sometimes to speak, sometimes just to sit nearby. They didn't talk about love, not yet. But the way she smiled at him now was different. Softer, earned. One day she brought him a blank crystal. "This one is for your own memory," she said. "Fill it with a truth you never want to forget." He held the crystal carefully. And for the first time in his life, he didn't have to make up a story. He just remembered the moment he stopped running and started living. Veritas was changing. It didn't happen with explosions or war, it started quietly. In the corners of the city, in the whispers of markets, and in the hearts of people who once thought truth could never bend. Jackson walked through the marketplace, where it all began. Once, he had lied for food, for favor, for fun. Now, he walked with no title, no guards, no audience. And still, people greeted him with soft nods and respectful eyes. Children ran past him, laughing. They weren't afraid of lies. They were curious about them. "Is it true you said the stars cry?" one child asked. Jackson smiled. "I said that, yes," he replied. "But now I know. Sometimes it's just rain." The girl blinked, confused, then giggled and ran off. Jackson turned to Lyra, who stood beside him with her usual calm grace. "You see," he said, "they laugh now." Lyra nodded. "They don't fear confusion anymore," she said. "You made the unknown less frightening." The council had given him a simple role. Cultural guide, not a teacher of lies, but a translator of human emotion. He worked with scholars and truth keepers, helping them understand irony, hesitation, sarcasm, and regret. Things Veritas never had names for before he arrived, and in return, Veritas taught him something too, that truth wasn't always about facts, it was about courage, the courage to, be open even when it hurts. He gave lectures in open circles, not from pedestals. He answered questions without tricks. He didn't charm anymore. He listened, and the people noticed. At first, many came just to see the human who had once lied to them all, but over time they came to hear the truths he now spoke. Truths that hurt, that healed, that connected. One day the truth keeper visited him. The old leader looked more tired than before, but also more human somehow. "You were a storm," he said, "but we needed one. We built our lives on silence and honesty, but we forgot emotion." Jackson bowed his head. "I never meant to be a teacher," he said. "I just didn't know where else to go." "And now?" the truth keeper asked. "Now, I don't want to leave," Jackson replied. Later that week, Veritas held a special ceremony. A new law had been passed, not to punish lies, but to recognize them. They called it the Law of Complexity. It stated, "Where truth ends, understanding begins." Jackson didn't speak during the ceremony. Instead, he stood in the back with Lyra, watching as a new future was written with calm voices and clear hands. "You changed us," Lyra said softly. He looked at her. "No," he said. "We changed each other." After the ceremony, Lyra took him to the sanctuary one last time. The stars above were brighter that night, as if listening. She held out a new memory crystal. "This one's for me," she said. "I want to remember what it felt like to believe in someone who failed and still stood up again." He took the crystal gently. "Then, I want to give you one too," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a dull blue shard, his own memory stone. "It holds the moment I realized I wasn't clever, I was just scared. But you made me brave." They placed the crystals beside each other on the altar stone. Two different truths, side by side, one born of survival, the other born of love. Jackson never left Veritas. He had ships, access, and even offers to speak on other worlds, but he chose to stay. Not as a hero, not as a leader, just as a man who once lied and learned how to tell the truth. Years later, the children of Veritas learned about Earth not through books, but through a man who knew how to twist words and then untwist them, a man who once walked into their world with empty hands and full lies and stayed to build something honest. They called him many names: Golden Speaker, Voice of Change, Truthbreaker, but the one Jackson liked best came from a little girl who had never seen the old days. She called him the man who made us feel, and in a world built on perfect honesty, that was the greatest gift of all.